We are live.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for another ITWeb webinar on a very crisp Wednesday morning. Crisp as in it's still sunny, but we can feel autumn has arrived and winter is just around the corner. The rains have stopped up here in Gauteng, but nonetheless, it is a beautiful day for us today. And we're going to tackle a topic that everybody is thinking about today. How do we protect critical data from ransomware and destructive cyber attacks? This is a very pertinent topic today because we know ransomware is easily the most common way nowadays for criminals to get at your data and to put you in a very tough spot. My name is James Francis. I will be your MC today for the webinar, which is co-hosted by GlassHouse, our sponsors for today. And we have some great guests lined up for you to walk through this topic and see what your options are today. Now, a cyber attack apparently takes place now every 39 seconds. That is incredible, and it's getting worse. They are saying that it's costing companies $13 million on average per attack. And according to Accenture, we can expect cybercrime over the next 5 years to become a global risk equating $5.2 trillion. That's with a T. This is huge. This is starting to get much bigger than any other type of crime we've seen out there. And yet for them to attack you is ridiculously easy. It really just takes one email, one bad click on a link, and you have ransomware spreading across your system. The point is data is at the core of this conversation. Data is very important. It is the big asset of your company. Certainly now as we move into a more digital era, business leaders are a lot more aware of data. There's more they want to do with data. Of course, that doesn't help if somebody breaks in and compromises your data. And that is where we come with GlassHouse's webinar today. They will talk to you about how departments who are tasked with security, backup, and recovery, as well as data management and risk and compliance, how they do not coordinate and use integrated approaches to protect their data. Do they even audit? Do they know what they have to do? What are the right appliances? What are the right software? GlassHouse today is also joined by Dell EMC, who will give us a perspective on some of the technologies behind this as well. And for today, I would like to welcome our three guests. We will be joined today first by Mr. Mike Steyer, who is the country manager for GlassHouse. We will also be joined by Mr. Greg McDonald, who's the Director for Systems Engineering at Dell Technologies South Africa. And last, but by absolutely no means least, Mr. Alp Barachik, the CEO of GlassHouse, is joining us today as well. And they're going to walk us through these steps. There will also be several polls that you can participate in, and we will have a Q&A session at the end so you can ask some pertinent questions from our guests. But without further ado, I would like to move over to Mr. Mike Steyer, who will introduce us to GlassHouse and take us a bit more further into cyber recovery. Thank you, Mike. It's over to you.
In the era of digital transformation, data volume is increasing exponentially, and the way we live and work is changing. So, is your data, the fuel of your digital business, safe? As organizations try to do more with less, operational excellence and focusing on value-added activities are becoming ever harder. Even more, 63% of businesses are not sure that they can recover all of their data from their backup systems. Keep up with digital transformation. Ensure that your data is protected and secure. Replace outdated and unreliable data protection platforms that have high restore times. Avoid high infrastructure costs. At GlassHouse, we work with our customers to offer the most appropriate data protection technology for their environment. Our approach enables our customers to get the most out of their investments. GlassHouse works with Dell Technologies to offer market-leading software and hardware. Dell's portfolio integrates data backup and business continuity solutions into a single product family. Our team of experienced engineers uses GlassHouse's established best practices to analyze enterprise business continuity needs, advise IT teams, as well as design, install, support, and operate enterprise backup and business continuity solutions. GlassHouse has implemented data backup and business continuity projects to more than 250 enterprises, including telecoms, banks, industrial companies, and government agencies. Every day, we meet the toughest RPO and RTO targets of enterprise IT customers. Data backup and business continuity are part of GlassHouse's DNA. Your data is safe with GlassHouse.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We really appreciate you coming in and joining our webinar today on cyber resilience, cyber recovery. And from our side, we are going to focus just today on cyber attacks, ransomware, and what do you do? What is your cyber recovery strategy need to be? From my side, I've been searching around looking for a definition. There's many of them out there about what is a cyber attack. And the best I could find was on the Cisco website, where it refers to a cyber attack being a malicious or deliberate attempt by an individual or an organization to breach your data, to steal your IP, or to ransom you in some way for financial gain at the end of the day. So we want to have a look at what are the typical cyber attacks that are out there. The most common is malware. That is when something is planted into your system, keyloggers, where ransomware, trojans, viruses are injected into your systems. They activate randomly or specific dates. They are there to encrypt your data or to funnel data out or to compromise your networking and your firewalls. You get the man in the middle. These are typically where a pseudo website or portal page is put up and somebody goes and logs on to that using their credentials, and the credentials are captured because it is not the actual website. It is a pseudo website. This is a form of phishing, and you get many emails that are sent out to people trying to do the same thing, to get you to go to a site, enter some level of information, which is going to give them an idea of what your credentials will look like. And password naivety is something that exists out there. If somebody has your name and maybe has a little bit of data about you, your date, your birth, your ID, many passwords can be worked out just by having an email address, a person's name, and potentially their date of birth. There's also brute force attacks out there where people just come in and destroy the access to and from your systems, thereby crashing your servers and taking them down. There's also the continual probe and penetrate, trying to get into your systems, looking for backdoors, looking for open ports, looking for areas of weakness through your software products. And, if you have a look how many times you have to update your Microsoft products and various applications, there are many loopholes that are continuously being discovered all the time. So these being the most common ones, we're going to focus on malware, ransomware from our side. 15% of South African organizations that have experienced a successful ransomware attack said that they experienced significant impact. And a further 27% reported some level of impact. 76% of those people experienced 2 to 5 days downtime. Now, if you're not living in a live and transactional environment and those type of things, it's not that important. However, take a site like the JSE or a site like takealot.com, 2 to 5 hours will be extremely detrimental to their business. So 10% of them experienced up to 7 days or more downtime. I think this is a time just for me to say that we recently had an investment company in South Africa that aims at the upper echelon of the marketplace. They experienced a cyber attack a month ago. Their portal, their online, their interface to their customers only came back online 2 or 3 days ago. It took almost 4 weeks for that company to have enough confidence in the portal through which they were attacked to bring that back online and put the various measures in place. Now, the customers there are long-term investors, so it's not a transactional environment. Yes, their data was up and running and everything was good straight away, but long time before, 4 weeks before their customers could get in and have a look at their data. Reputationally, they never suffered any real damage from a financial perspective, but reputationally, I bet there's a lot of irate customers there that were looking at what their investments were doing and couldn't get in. In a further poll on a survey run that ITWeb wrote some articles on, 24% of organizations surveyed, South African organizations surveyed, in 2019 experienced ransomware attacks. And 44% of those surveyed said they expect to have some kind of a ransomware attack. So, you know, it's out there. People are experiencing it. It's happening. We are exposed in South Africa. And I can tell you, it's going to be something that is going to become more and more prevalent all the time. The last point is very scary. 27% of organizations admitted to paying the ransom, and that's on a global basis. Think of the reputational damage that you will suffer if you aid and abet criminal activities like paying ransoms to cyber criminals. The flip side of it is you can say, yes, we won't pay any kind of a ransom to a cyber criminal, and then you're allowing your customer data to be destroyed or to be put out onto the internet, into the ether. Either way, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. It's not a win situation for anybody. You're going to suffer some level of, if you're not financial damage, you're certainly going to suffer some level of reputational damage. So why have a cyber resilience program in place? The reason being is your traditional data protection is not enough. Backup and recovery, your snapshots, your synchronous mirroring, your asynchronous copying of your data, your point in time, your incremental copies of your data, these are created for very specific reasons. To allow for data recovery on a day-to-day business, errors, data corruption, data failures, regulatory requirements, the copies of the data for your development systems and your user acceptance systems, audit, and various other reasons. It has its place, okay? But and there's very mature systems, but it has no real cyber resilience capability, because the first thing in a ransomware, they're going to attack your backup software. They're going to destroy your data catalogs where your tape and your backups sit. From that perspective, you're not going to be able to recover from those systems. Traditional disaster recovery is not enough. That's been put in place for some type of a physical or a tangible event where there's power, flooding, fire, electrical, political destabilization, where you can fail over from one site to another site almost immediately and keep your business up and running. So as part of your business continuity plan, traditional backup and recovery, traditional disaster recovery, they need to be there. But that's not enough. The world has evolved, cybercrime has evolved, and you need to have a proper cyber resilience program in place. So what exactly is a cyber resilience program? Okay, so new age business continuity, you have to have this as part of your business continuity strategy. It has to be part of your tactical and your operational plan in this space. Because the threat is so high at the moment and the stakes are so high, and later on in the presentations, you're going to see some astounding figures. James has alluded to a couple of them, but you're going to see some astounding figures of trillions of expected damage due to cybercrime. So you're going to need tried and tested systems. You can't just go and put any old system in there, put a copy of your data in a corner and expect that that data is going to be safe. It's not going to work for you. These guys are way ahead of that. So you have to have tried and tested systems running on tried and tested infrastructure. You have to have a vault where you can keep a golden copy of your data, the crown jewels of your organization, your revenue generating systems. you need to have a copy of that data that is 100% immutable, that is 100% in the format that you know was last working. You also have to have that vault sitting away from your network, your systems, specifically your users. You have to have an AirGap where nothing can get to this vault and tamper with the data. Only the software and the infrastructure that is built into that environment exists in that space. You have to have a secret source. You have to have some type of artificial intelligence and machine learning that is continuously scanning the data. There's a continuous analytics running. This analysis looks for data that it knows, continuously monitors that data and disregards it because it knows exactly what it is. It continuously monitors data that it does not know what it is and watches for any type of change. As soon as it sees any type of known change or unknown change, that data is flagged for inspection. But remember, you still have a 100% original copy of your data in an immutable format, which is like being on a CD. Once it's written there, it can never, ever change. So you have to have analytics that is going to sit on there and continuously scan the data that sits inside your vault. You also have to make sure that you're going to meet all of the latest regulations. GDPR, POPI's coming in very soon for us. And you also have to bring various parts of your organization together. This is not just an IT problem. It's not just a business problem. It's both. IT and business have to be in bed together when building your cyber resilience program. You have to decide how you're going to address a ransomware attack. Are you going to go public? Are you going to be quiet? Are you going to pay the ransom? What are you going to do? And what is your strategy to recover? How are you going to report it? And also, what is your mean time to recover? Because if your backup catalog is totally destroyed, you're not going to be able to restore your data very quickly. Your disaster recovery program, if that's been embedded there for a long time, has probably copied the corrupt data across to the other side. So you're sitting with your disaster recovery site, sitting with corrupt data, stolen data, or encrypted data at the end of the day. This is an organizational-wide problem, and it has to go right up to the boardroom. The stakeholders at the highest level have to make decisions on how you're going to handle cyber attacks and how you're going to look at preserving your reputational integrity. Risk and compliance right across the business has to be involved. Many times now in the new normal, people go and will work at a coffee shop, or they'll go and work in some type of a temporary workspace. They're going to be on networks that are not under your control. Your problem could walk right through the front door the next time that person comes and logs on to your network. So there's got to be risk and compliance right across the business. Every single user, down to the guy scanning something in the warehouse, needs to be educated, and those systems need to be checked and continually looked at from a risk and compliance perspective. Your security guys have to adapt. The security people believe that they're outward and they've got all the security measures in place. We saw the statistics that I put up earlier on. There has been successful ransomware attacks. They will get past you at some stage. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. Somebody will find a backdoor. A disgruntled employee will open a backdoor or put something on a system that's going to allow these guys to get in. And there's many, many requirements that are out there by certain regulatory authorities, bodies such as Safe Harbor in the financial sector, that you've got to meet those requirements. So your cyber resilience program has to be robust. It has to be built into your existing business continuity program. It has to have buy-in at the highest level. Your CIO, your CISO, your CEO, and your board has to make a decision, not only how they're going to ensure their data is safe and how much money they're going to throw at doing that, but they've also got to make sure that the reputation remains intact by the way they handle a successful cyber attack. So with that, I'm going to hand over to Greg McDonald. My contact details are available on the slide and will be made available. At this time, there will also be a poll question that will be posted out to you guys. Please answer the poll. And from your side, we will give those results out to you so that you'll be able to see what is happening. I thank you for your time. You're going to be well educated and entertained by Greg. and help going forward in this presentation. And I look forward to interacting with you further in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mike. And now we will go over to Greg McDonald. As I've introduced him earlier in the event, Greg is the Director of Systems Engineering at Dell Technologies South Africa. And we all know Dell very well. I know you also know Greg by this point. So Greg, thank you. Over to you.
Thank you for the lovely introduction today, and I really appreciate being here. It's awesome to cover such an incredible topic like cyber recovery with our audience today, and I'm really looking forward to covering the next few slides with you in detail. Let's move on. So, as our colleague said, my name is Greg McDonald. I'm the Director for Systems Engineering here at Dell. This is a fantastic topic that I talk regularly to customers about, and it really is off the back of some of these amazing statistics that you see on the screen here in front of you. And let's take a read together. It says there, 79% of global executives rank cyber attacks and threats as one of their organization's highest risk management priorities. That's a really scary statistic to think about. And I like to say that South African customers are not immune to cyber attacks. Mike was referring to some examples of South African customers who'd potentially been associated or been attacked through cyber warfare type of processes. And ransomware is one of the biggest ones that we see across the industry. It affects healthcare customers, security customers, financial services, small business, and any type of customer in between. It may even be a simple thing of ransomware locking up your PC in a personal type situation, and you have to pay potentially a couple of Bitcoins to release that fund out of it or get the keys to unlock and unencrypt your particular machine. The big issue here is that customer executives consider cyber attacks as one of the biggest risks to their businesses. And it's very concerning that we're starting to see some of this stuff happen here in South Africa as well. But when we talk about cyber attacks, it's one thing to say that your executives understand that cyber attacks are potentially some of the biggest risk factors to our business. It's another question to ask, is our business ready to deal with the cyber attacks? And if you read the statistic on the screen there, it says 69% of global IT decision makers lack the confidence in the organization to recover all business critical data in the event of a cyber attack. Now, Mike showed some examples of customers who've taken a lot of time to recover from cyber attacks, and how they recover is potentially some of the areas of speciality that we're going to talk to you about today. Let's move on. I don't know if any of you have Garmin watches or Garmin products. I know I certainly do. I've got a lovely Garmin watch that I wear all the time. And I was quite surprised to see that even Garmin themselves were hacked, and some of the fees that they had to pay were quite significant to unlock their systems and unlock some of the services that even personal people like me use here in South Africa as well. Interesting to note is if you look in the middle of the screen there, it talks about wanted by the FBI. And you can see some of the pictures there. There's 6 guys there. This is the US government indicting Russian hacker groups and putting sanctions on specific people in Russia associated with the FBI's top most wanted cyber actors dealing with cyber attacks, whether they be conspiracy, whether it be domain name, conspiracy to commit fraud, talk about wire fraud themselves, protection, aggravated identity theft. The charges are quite large and quite detailed as well. And interesting to see how actual cyber attack or cyber actors, or what we call bad actors, are now topping many of the FBI's most wanted lists in terms of who they're going after and who they're looking after. But interesting, we talk about Garmin as a sort of one product. Don't think that Garmin's immune to this sort of thing. Even hospitals, healthcare businesses across Europe, across the US have also been attacked. And they're quite nervous about patient data or potentially having patients on life support systems, and these life support systems being potentially threatened with ransomware type of products as well. And so hospitals may be an easy target to think about as well. Ultimately, if we think about what's going on in this particular area, there's some amazing statistics to support the conversation. Now, have a look on the left-hand side of the screen there. It says cyber attack occurs every 39 seconds. Wow, that's pretty incredible. Pretty much in the time I've spoken to you, we've seen numerous cyber attacks that happen. Even Dell on its own network globally, we're blocking about 1 million cyber attacks a day of all different types, all different threat vectors coming from all over the globe. And that's just our business as it stands. Now, we're blocking 1 million. The odd 1 or 2 do get through, But ultimately, we have quite robust systems in place to help support and deal with our own infrastructure requirements as Dell Technologies' internal IT globally. When we talk to our partners like Verizon, for example, Verizon show us that most of the data breaches that they see on their security scanners and radars tend to be financially motivated. And 40% of them or more involve small business. Now, small business is probably the most or the easiest or the softest targets to attack. And generally, whilst the numbers can be small to extort money from, when you add up many small businesses, they can grow into quite large funded businesses that are interesting to look at. And if we think about small business being one company or type of business that could be attacked, don't forget that whether you're in the banking sector, whether you're in the capital markets or energy sector, or even in the public sector, you're not immune. And if you can see on your screen there, it shows quite a few examples of what the average cyber attack would cost in some of these particular businesses. Public sector customers have an average of about nearly $8 million worth of cost of cyber attack. Banking customers, $18.4 million. These are pretty big numbers. And even Accenture confirms to us to say that the average cyber attack that they see on their consulting side of their business is about $13 million. And Accenture also tells us that globally, about $5.2 trillion is probably of business or IP or intellectual property or goodwill may be at risk over the next 5 years. That's a pretty big number. And if you times it by a local exchange rate, it's even larger, with many zeros attached to it as well. And it's a pretty scary time to be alive. So ultimately, who's doing this stuff? Who are the bad actors here? Who are the guys we need to worry about, or girls we need to worry about? Well, they're broken down into 6 kind of key categories of what we call bad actors. And a bad actor is somebody who has the motivation, the techniques, and the goals to do one of 6 things inside a customer or a country. They could perform general crimes. Here's where you have theft or extortion for financial gain. Think about your own PC being locked up and they retrieve money to unlock your PC. Then we have the insider side of things. This is where insiders or trusted insiders are exploited for personal financial gain, intellectual property, and here they're looking for access that specific people have to privileged systems, and they're looking to extort specific IP, intellectual property information from customers associated with new technologies that are yet to be released. The list is endless. We also have espionage. This is traditional corporate or what we call nation-state funded actors. When I talk about nation-state, this is actual governments, global governments, who are funding security teams inside their own countries to perform espionage, to perform crimes, to perform hacktivism, for example, or general terrorism or warfare. And if you think about what hacktivism is all about, that's really advancing political or social causes. There's been some superb stories about influence into the American voting systems itself. And if you just Google search these kind of things, there's some real fascinating reading as to who's behind some of these details around advancing specific political causes. We also talk about general things like terrorism and warfare. And terrorism could include things like sabotage or destruction to instill fear or take down specific institutions or capabilities of competing governments around the world. And then obviously warfare. What goes on behind the scenes is probably quite scary. Gone are the days of a World War I or a World War II where we fight on a battlefield, for example, with sort of guns and tanks as a traditional way businesses and sort of countries went to war. Today, we move into the digital realm. And here we have countries that have invested in offensive and defensive capabilities to protect their countries, protect their economies, and go and challenge other businesses and economies around the world. And this is a very interesting part of the world. Now, when we talk about a cyber attack, where do they start? Mike alluded to it a little earlier. He spoke about going after the backup. The backup is probably the easiest thing to attack when the bad actors come into a business or come into an economy/country. They generally target IT or backup administration type of people. And the first place they look at is in the catalog, the master backup catalog. And they look into some of the specific details as to what they can find in the master catalog. Master catalog has got all the details. And once you compromise the master backup catalog, you therefore can lock that up or encrypt it to slow it down or stop it from backing up systems when actors are on board or inside systems themselves. Once you take over the master server, then you get access to backup clients and even other media servers. And therefore, once you have access to media servers and clients, You then have access to other target systems, tape, cloud, network attached storage, SAN, shares, all types of systems across it. So really the gateway from a cyber attack point of view is to hit the backups. Now, the interesting thing about the backups and the interesting data points behind it is that the average bad actor sits inside a compromised company or system for an average anything between 100 or more days before the attack is actually launched. So if you think about it, what these guys have got is access into potentially your system or a business's system. They're sitting there, they're understanding, they're not necessarily doing anything. They're collecting the data, collecting the understanding as to how the architecture is laid out. They're performing and logistically looking at how they would attack their systems. And then they launch the attack roughly 100 days after access is granted into the system. It really is a pretty scary thing to think about when it comes to attacks and targeting backup platforms inside the customer's environment. Now, I also want to differentiate between what's disaster recovery versus what's cyber resilience. Disaster recovery or business continuity is certainly not enough to address modern cyber attacks. Disaster recovery is all about RTOs and RPOs. Here we're talking about recovery times, the ability to connect and actually manage the recovery process inside an organization. Also, when it comes to the impact of the disaster, it's most important to understand that when you're in a disaster recovery situation, it is about recovering quickly the requirements of the business so it can get back to business. Well, what I spoke to you about before in the previous slide was where cyber recovery is potentially the ability to stop bad actors performing and managing, locking out your backups. Often when you target backups, your disaster recovery is potentially the area that needs to be managed and sorted out quickly, if not adequately, appropriately, and managed by the business. Now, cyber recovery and cyber resilience is now becoming a legal and regulatory trend around the world. You know, talk about different businesses, different standards, different regulatory bodies around the world all have different mandates in terms of how they'd like customers and businesses to protect themselves and be cyber resilient. And so whether you're talking about businesses that operate in the US or those that operate in Europe, even through Africa and across to the Far East, etc., each of those economies and the central banks and central control regulatory businesses inside those economies are putting standards down in terms of how customers need to protect themselves, specifically high IP related type businesses, banking customers, healthcare customers, for example, energy, telco, gas type customers, for example. Those are the big ones that need to have cyber resiliency plans that not only complies with local law and requirements, but potentially other market requirements depending on where they operate. These days, customers are global. They require you to operate around the world, and they require you to operate in such a manner that allows you to do business in the right manner, but also in a protected manner at the same sort of time as well. Introducing Dell's Power Protect Cyber Recovery. We think we have the answer to much of what's been discussed by Mike and I thus far. It really is the leadership of Dell Technologies Group company in this particular area. We talk about cyber resilience leadership, and we've been doing this since 2015, when we launched our very, very first isolated cyber recovery solution with custom deployment. It's kind of rudimentary. It's a version 1 sort of product, but what I can say is the development behind Dell has really come full steam ahead, and we've put significant investment from an R&D money point of view into producing what I think is a first-rate product, and so does the industry agree with us as well. Now, Mike spoke about Shelton Harbor as one example. Shelton Harbor is an American institution that it talks about how financial customers in the US need to build cyber recovery systems so they can protect their businesses. And Dell Technologies' cyber recovery solution is the only AirGap solution that Shelton Harbor recommends for American financial services customers. My view on the topic is that if it's good enough for Shelton Harbor in the US, for example, it's probably pretty good for customers around the world. And what we've seen is with our alliance with Shelton Harbor, it's meant that we are able to accelerate the amount of cyber recovery customers that we've got globally. As it stands today, we have over 350 customers around the world who focus on cyber recovery and have purchased our solution. We're also the #1 data protection and appliances vendor globally with the largest amount of market share across the world compared to any other customer in this particular space. Now, what is an AirGap solution? An AirGap solution talks about a data center solution today in a backup. And you can see on the picture there, there's production, there's backup, etc., etc. There's some details around it. Sorry, I just lost my slide deck there. Can anybody hear me? Hi, back.
You are back again.
Yeah, sorry. Is the voice coming through 100%? Is the sound? Because I'm
100%. Everything is fine.
Thank you. Sorry, I didn't hear anything back, so I wasn't too sure if I was still online. My apologies to the audience for the delay. So I was talking to you about cyber recovery and the ability to talk about an AirGap solution. Now, what is an AirGap solution? An AirGap solution is where we talk about production systems and backup systems. These are pretty typical across all customers today. You can see in our picture on the left-hand side there, we've got servers and systems that have production workloads and applications, and obviously be a backup attached to it as well. When we talk about an AirGap solution, what an AirGap solution is a vault system. Now, in a vault, we call it a cyber recovery vault. And in the vault, we have backup technology and analytics systems, as well as some recovery platforms isolated into a dedicated environment. That environment has an AirGap network connection between the production backup systems and the vault. The AirGap solution is open for a very, very short period of time. And because of the dedupe and compression capabilities of our system being such a high factor, we only need to migrate very small amounts of data between backup systems and cyber recovery vault systems. The difference is that we don't ever update the production backup environment to say that there's a second copy sitting in the vault. And once the data is moved and across into the vault requirement, we close the AirGap solution. And so therefore, it's a completely isolated IP environment. There's no public access, there's no private access to the systems, and it gives us the ability to say, if there is a cyber attack, how exactly do we recover from it? Well, we then pass over to our cyber recovery vault. And this is where we start to look at the particular data, perform analysis on the particular data, look at the types of systems in there, and give us the ability to recover very quickly back to a production environment. But the data that we recover is a perfect running condition and not something that has encrypted or ransomware in it that we then recover into our production environment, further exacerbating the particular problem as well. There's also monitoring and reporting as part of the solution. And this is the level of detail we speak to customers about that they need to perform and have in their businesses if they want to be cyber resilient as an organization going forward. Now, why is cyber recovery important? And this is where the big differences come in between the vendors in terms of the solutions. And I want you all to think about how we do cyber recovery in a good, better, best type situation. It's good enough to have immutable copies, locked systems, locked backups, what we call worm immutable copies. Mike spoke about the CD, the old CD writer that you have there. Once the data is on it, it's great. Hopefully you can write it in the worm format that can't be changed or edited thereafter. And hopefully you have things like evaluated security credentials. That's probably good enough as a starting point. What we want you to think about is how we go from good to better. And here you need to think about protecting from insiders in your business, how you manage multiple backup software vendors and their support systems in the businesses. And then as we go to better, we want you to go to best going forward. And here's where we think about fully automated vault AirGap type solution with full context, analytical, machine learning systems that analyze the data in the vault. It's endorsed by vendors like Sheltered Harbor, and we have enhanced recovery tools as part of the process to make it very easy for customers and vendors to recover very quickly if there are incidents that happen inside their businesses. Now, when you do the comparison of Dell to other vendors, have a look at some of these common vendors on the screen there. Many of you may have some of these vendors deployed in your products, as products in your businesses. And some of these products are really good. We compete with these products on a daily basis. If we look at the cyber recovery advantages and the ability to recover in a cyber incident, Dell EMC certainly stands out head and shoulders compared to all the other vendors that you see on the right-hand side of the screen there. And we have the ability to go from good to better to best. Our solution is taking care of verified worm immutable copies as a good alternative compared to other vendors. It gives you the ability to look at protecting from malicious access to credentials inside the business. It has the ability to back up multiple software vendors. And we can start out very small in the systems, and over time, as budgets become available, move into complete isolated air-gap solutions on the same architecture. That, for me, is the beauty of the solution. And this is ultimately where we start with customers. We land and deliver very aggressively focused backup solutions with best-of-breed architecture, software, hardware integrated with best-of-breed compression and deduplication functionality to it. Then, as budgets become available inside businesses, we add on additional features and functions to those systems, and we can move them into a fully air-gapped solution to deliver the best cyber resiliency solution in the industry, and something South African customers should be looking at with our partner GlassHouse. Now, when I talk about analytics, this is really the secret sauce as to why we're different compared to other vendors in the market. The Cybersense product is deeply integrated into our cyber recovery solution. Now, Cybersense has some interesting skills and capabilities in this particular area. Ultimately, what Cybersense does is it starts by scanning the source data. Data scanned in its original format, in its backed up format, in the vault itself. No need to uncompress it or dedupe it or remove it or rehydrate it from the backup. The analytics are performed on the backup in the source system itself. We also generate a significant amount of statistics inside the servers. About 100 observations per files are performed inside the particular file locations themselves. We're looking for things like entropy and similarity. We're looking for how the hash keys have changed. We're looking for what the previous system used to look like compared to what the new system looked like. And we scan and adjust every single file as we go along to say, actually, what we have is this copy of data was good, but things have changed in the second copy of data. The second copy of data may be compromised. It may actually have much of that ransomware data that the hackers or bad actors instilled in the system to start with in your vault or in your other backups. Don't rehydrate or don't manage or delete these compromised sort of systems themselves. And ultimately what we're doing is we're analyzing all the attack vectors at a file level, and we're doing it on a regular type of process with systems in the AirGap vault that perform this calculation as often as you would like it to do, depending on how quickly files are updated in the backup process. And finally, we produce some really detailed investigative reporting attached with the system that gives you a lot of confidence to know that the data that's been copied across from a production into our backup and then across into the vault is 100% accurate and hasn't got any malware or any threat vectors attached to it because of the analytics being performed in the system itself. Now, when we look at these type of systems, Cybersense is really what it's all about. And Cybersense has amazing machine learning capabilities that allow for very early detection and give you the ability to rapidly recover from a cyber attack. When you have a cyber attack, you've got to know that the data that we're recovering must be free from any attack vectors. There must be no ransomware or corrupted files, no deleted data or data changes, and any of the accounts that are associated with the backup of the server are not breached either, and none of the backup executables are breached as well. What you're looking for is giving the confidence back to business that they can recover from the last good copy of data that's free from any issues and errors. And Cybersense is the product that makes that all happen. Cybersense is deeply integrated into the solution stack that when you purchase the cyber resilience platform from Dell, comes as part of the value proposition and is deployed through our partner GlassHouse with their particular first brand range of services. Now, when we compare Cybersense to other vendors, and this is often what we see in the market, Cybersense has the ability to do everything on-premise, has the ability to do everything inside the vault, inside the cyber resilience vault that's air-gapped from the industry. Other vendors in this particular market often then go up to the public cloud to perform their analytics. And often what we see with customers is if you're in a situation where you've seen a cyber attack, you may find that your networks have been compromised. You may find that they've been blocked from public IP access. So think about this. If you've been blocked from public IP access and your networks are down, how are you going to reach the public cloud to perform your analytics on the data? Secondly, if you've got a significant amount of backups deployed in your environment, how are you going to get that data up into the public cloud to perform the analytics? In those kind of contexts, we think that our solution is really light years and head and shoulders above alternative vendors who perform solution analytics in a slightly different way compared to us being on-prem, in the vault, on-prem doing the analytics engine and scanning for metadata, document metadata, and document contents as well. Moving on to my next slide, what we've also done in terms of our version updates for the system is really improved the GUI side of things. You can see on the left-hand side of the screen there, that's the cyber recovery dashboard. It's a beautiful HTML5 dashboard, very simple, very easy to use, and very intuitive to use as well. Something you can pick up quite easily, a couple of clicks here and there, minimal amounts of training, and you're operational. And the Cybersense alert systems really go into significant detail when the reports come out to say, here are some examples of files that have changed, hashing keys that have changed, entropy and similarity calculations that have been performed on the files, and here are some examples of some alerts. What would you like us to do with them? Do we isolate them? Do we delete them? Or do we potentially put them into a separate location so we can give them to the authorities so they can sort of do their particular homework on the files and potentially understand where the threat vector is coming from inside our own organization? Now, it's vitally important to talk about AirGap. It's also vitally important to talk about which industries potentially need an AirGap solution. Here, we're talking about industries like healthcare, for example. I discussed healthcare a little bit earlier. Things like electronic medical records, scheduling, payments, billing systems, all the kind of stuff that's important to us when we're in hospital. If you're in the financial services game, consider this. How do we manage and deal with payment processing systems, core banking, trading, treasury, and the sheltered harbor sort of data? And so whether you're in healthcare or financial services, life science, retail, the list is endless. And every individual business has got a unique set of characteristics that must be protected based on their type of industry that they're in. When you map it back to things like sheltered harbor and the financial services type customers, here's where we think we can do amazing work with vendors and industry institutions like sheltered harbor. As I said to you before, sheltered harbor is the only, or should I say, sheltered harbor endorses Dell Technologies as the only and preferred cyber resilience solution that they prefer for financial customers who are part of sheltered harbor. Now, who's part of sheltered harbor? Pretty much every financial services organization in the US is part of sheltered harbor. It's a very interesting part of the business, and it protects confidence in the US financial system. That's the key premise behind sheltered harbor. And we think that sheltered harbor provides a lot of credibility to the solution that we're talking about with you today. Here's some examples of some recent wins that I'm going to talk to you about. This first one is a financial services customer. Here, we were brought in to help protect the securities trading platform as well as business critical data. They anticipated that if they were to see a cyber recovery attack, they would potentially be outage focused for about $10 million per day. That's the kind of number that they had in the back of their mind. They had massive hardware vendors or across it, different vendors from different hardware vendors and different technology vendors with different products inside their business. And their board was concerned with compliance with Federal Reserve regulators and American financial institution compliance requirements that were placed on them. What we then put in place for them was a Power Protect cyber recovery solution, completely automated, completely orchestrated with all the processes that involved very minimal operational impact to their business. And we built all the run books with them for their storage and backup environment. And the results for them, it met the board requirements, and the board was happy that they signed off their particularly statutory requirements with the SEC in the US and the public listing requirements that they had for their businesses in the US. It also provided a fundamental environment for them to add additional applications to the system over time, which meant that they start small with us from a budget point of view, and the system grew until it got to a situation where they covered all elements of the financial services requirement that they had. Next up, we're going to talk about healthcare. Healthcare is a sort of big one for me as well. You know, I've seen some of my own family members come through hospitals. It makes me particularly nervous when I see some of the machines that businesses have, healthcare companies have, running critical care for patients, for example, whether it be on heart or dialysis, for example. Imagine if those devices got attacked or ransomware attached to them as well. And there's many examples of our healthcare businesses across the globe who've had ransomware attacks to them. I can't help but think about the UK public sector health department being attacked by WannaCry, ransomware, sort of 2 years back, for example. Those are scary numbers that were associated with it. Now, this particular healthcare example I'm going to talk to you about today is of a British healthcare particular customer. And there, what they were seeing is they were being targeted across all of the individual smaller site hospitals across the UK and some of their larger hospitals as well. Everything was being attacked. Secondly, they had a lot of budget constraints. So how do you manage the budget relative to understanding that your business is under attack from ransomware? Secondly, they were getting significant pressure by the British government to make sure that they complied with their regulatory requirements that they put down. Our business helped them putting down a PowerProtect cyber recovery solution with quick deployment, and we built the Cybersense system with them so they could show them how they can analyze and bring the alerts quite quickly when active cyber threats hit their businesses. Finally, nobody else has an AirGap solution like Dell Technologies was the statement back from the customer. That's awesome to see that the customer acknowledged it and put down a very minimal investment with them versus the risks that they had in their businesses. And this was a happy customer who came out of this with a smile on his face rather than a frown on his face. For us, it's about starting now, guys. It's very important that you start somewhere with cyber recovery. The vault is the way to go. And here are some vault recommendations for you on the call today. Think about authentication, identity, and security systems. Active Directory, DNS, certifications, event logs, etc., etc. That's some of the stuff that you may need to protect. In your networking business or your networking side of your business, switching, firewalls, IP services, access controls, firmware, microcode patches, these are the kind of IP that you potentially should be putting in your cyber recovery vault, which allows you to recover if they're in the event that you need to. In your storage business, backup, SAN configurations, storage abstraction settings, firmware, patches, etc., similar to what we look in the network side of things. Intellectual property, source codes, proprietary algorithms, developer libraries, the stuff that keeps businesses alive and the stuff businesses make money from. Finally, the tools, host and build tools. We talk about physical or virtual platform tools, DevOps tools, automation scripting, etc. Firmware, microcode patches, again, it's a very common theme that we're seeing across the business. These are all good examples of systems that must be backed up and backed up appropriately in the vault. And then finally, documentation. How can we recover from an incident? How do we perform DR? What are the runbooks, the checklists, the management extracts, HR documentation, contact lists, etc.? These are all simple examples that can be put into the cyber recovery vault. And we think you need to start here first if you are to deploy and be successful your cyber recovery vault solution. So last few slides from my side, and then we can close up. Why Dell EMC? Well, we're the only vendor in the market that's operating an isolated operational AirGap data vaulting solution that's best of breed, and we're doing it since 2015. 2, we have a multi-layered security design that protects against a whole array of the threats that are integrated into the solution, including insiders in your own business. 3, it's completely automated, orchestrated with a very modern HTML5 user interface. 4, we talk about secure vault analytics, and the analytics are performed inside the vault rather than in the public cloud or other locations. When we talk about the last 2 points, endorsement by Sheltered Harbor, and we've been marketing the solution for many years with hundreds of customers. We think us, together with our partner GlassHouse, have really the preferred solution to drive into the local markets. If you're interested to learn more about the solution, Dell websites, dellemc.com/cyber recovery, lots of webinars, lots of documentation, lots of solution briefs, information, beautiful videos, endorsements, and examples across the globe of customers who've rolled out these solutions. We think you should be looking at this kind of solution, and we think Dell Technologies with our partner GlassHouse should be the partner you should be considering if you're interested in cyber recovery solutions. That's it from my side. I'd like to hand back to our audience host today, and thank you again for your contributions and your efforts. I really appreciate talking to you all today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Greg, for a fantastic presentation on there. I'm certainly a very potent solution for people to look into that. But taking us a little bit further, our third guest for today is Mr. Alp Barachik. He is the CEO of GlassHouse, and we will see his presentation. There will also be a poll starting with his presentation, so please go give your opinion there, and let's see what you think. Thank you, and over to you, Alp.
Hi, everybody. Good morning. Thank you for taking the time and thank you for joining us. I'm actually attending the webinar from our headquarters here. And wherever you are in the world today, cybersecurity has to be absolutely top of mind. So Greg has just done a great job explaining the technology. What I will do in my presentation is I will talk about the services wrap that will make the technology come alive. Over the last 18 months or so, as GlassHouse, we have invested very heavily into our cybersecurity services capabilities. And the whole idea here is we want to create a tailor-made cyber recovery solution for your company. So this is not a one-size-fits-all solution. The services that we provide here to make the technology come alive and protect you, everything has to be tailor-made. So what are the value adds that we're going to add? Number one, a complete suite. Cyber recovery software, data protection storage, usage reporting, processes, and runbooks. Number two, a fully managed service. The way we do cyber recovery, we deliver and operate the entire solution 24/7, 365 days by GlassHouse's data protection and support teams, trained none other by Dell itself. And of course, number three, customer choice. So you can choose as an organization to receive the cyber recovery services managed remotely in your data center or hosted in one of GlassHouse's data centers in South Africa or abroad. We're going to offer you 5 key benefits here. The number one is obviously security. The whole idea is to provide the highest level of cyber protection, security, and availability for your critical data. Number two, whatever it is that we do, we realize in today's world, IT staff loads are going through the roof. So the way we do this, we offer it with full managed services to reduce your staff load, IT staff load. Number three, speed of recovery. There has been so many cases where companies have survived attacks. However, it has taken them weeks to get back to normal operation. With the cyber recovery service from Dell and GlassHouse, we want to offer you speed of recovery, the capability of quickly accessing offline AirGap gold copies. Number four is risk mitigation. We want to protect you against the cost of attacks and potential loss of data by maintaining AirGap immutable copies. Finally, recoverability. This is all about ease of mind, the capability of restoring affected systems and services with ease of mind. So how do we do it? So what's the magic? Dell provides fantastic technology, but what is it that we do to give you this tailor-made CRS solution? GlassHouse has designed a 5-step process to bring the technology alive. Our step number one is identify. We have to sit down with you, our consultants, and we need to identify the most critical data and applications for your organization to protect. Those who try to do everything fail at everything. So we have to figure out the most critical data and applications. Step number two is design. So we have to design a tailor-made cyber recovery solution to fit your business objectives. This is a tailor-made solution. Number three, we have to deploy. It's great to design, but at some point we got to bring things alive. Number four, after deployment, we have to start operating the backup environment per the design processes. Step number five is about response. I would like to say, in case of a cyber event, unfortunately, we know in today's world, it's not a question of ifs, it's a question of whens, As a result, step number 5 is all about GlassHouse being right next to you to respond to cyber recovery issues with processes and runbooks. So I'm going to take the time to go into each one of the 5 steps, but before I do that, we got to talk about a couple concepts. So there is a difference between cyber recovery and disaster recovery. In disaster recovery, we really talk about only RPO and RTO. So we really have to also take into consideration destruction detection objectives, destruction assessment objectives, checkpoint intervals, and checkpoint counts when we're talking about cyber recovery solutions. So destruction detection objectives, so the DDO, it's the amount of time lapsed from the point of incursion to detection. Super important. The reason Dell has put in AI and machine learning into their solution is to decrease the amount of time lapsed from the point of incursion to detection. So if an attacker has been in your systems for days versus years or months, then you have a totally different problem, right? So destruction detection objective is super important. Destruction assessment objectives are super important. So this is the time that is allowed to assess the extent of the damage once an incursion has been detected. So we have to set a time so that our teams have the time to think about what they're going to do once we actually see that something's gone haywire in our systems. Then we need to look at the hack point metrics, checkpoint intervals, the measure of time, how frequently to make IR checkpoints. Sometimes this is every 24 hours, sometimes it's every 6 hours. Clearly, the less data that we identify as critical, the more checkpoints we can put in. So it's all give and take, and we really have to assess our situation. And obviously the checkpoint count, the number of checkpoints to maintain in the vault. This is typically 1 to 2 weeks. And we take all those concepts, we put them on a timeline. This is what the world looks like. As you can see, DDO, the destruction detection objective, is the largest component that determines how much data that you will lose. So during Greg's presentation, he talked about Cybersense, cyber recovery, the pieces of Dell software that add artificial intelligence and machine learning into the technology. So super important concepts because they determine my destruction detection objective. The smarter I am, the faster I can ascertain what has happened to my systems, whether I've been under attack or not. And based on that, I can take action quicker and minimize the data that I will lose. Now, coming back to GlassHouse, the technology is great. Now we have to take a look at what are the services that bring this alive. Now, I've talked about a 5-step process. Step number 1 is our consultants, GlassHouse consultants, sit with you to define your CRS objectives and identify critical data and applications to host in the vault. What does that mean? So just to give an example from GlassHouse itself, we are a company. We operate internationally. We have quite a bit of data. We have quite a bit of applications. So, and we eat our own dog food or drink our own champagne, depending on how you want to put it. So we said, all right, we take our backups. And in some of the territories that we act in, we are also a cloud provider. So we said, what are the critical applications and data for GlassHouse? And our consultants pinpointed 4 applications and their data as critical. Number 1 is ITSM. We serve hundreds upon hundreds of the largest businesses in Middle East and Africa. So we said, okay, all these customers, we actually interact with them through our IT service management system, our ITSM system. So we said, we want to make sure we're able to continue to serve our customers even in case of a cyber incident. So we said our number one critical application is our ITSM. Now, we want to be able to get in touch with our customers, and all that data, all our customer data, is in our CRM servers. So we said, all right, that's our second critical application. Of course, all our financial data is in our SAP system. We use SAP HANA, and the HANA database has all our financial data, our accounts receivable, and unfortunately, our accounts payable. So we said, all right, well, we got to make sure that we actually look at we look at our SAP database and we mark it as a critical application, especially the accounts receivable part. And of course, Active Directory. So as an international company that serves some of the largest businesses in our part of the world, we want to make sure that we know who's who has what authentication rights to enter which systems. So number 4 critical application was Active Directory. So we identified these critical applications, and then we came to our strategy, right? So, and this is what our consultants will do with you. We're going to define the destruction detection objectives, the destruction assessment objectives, cyber data recover point, and cyber data recovery times for your organization, just like we did for GlassHouse. Then we will review and document the current storage landscape. Where is your data? We will review and document the current application portfolio. We will work with you to review the current backup infrastructure. Now, once we're done with all of that, then we can define the high-level requirements for the cyber recovery software based on provided storage, network, and application characteristics. And based on that, we can identify the applications that we're going to protect. And we document all of this in the cyber recovery service scope. So we define a tailor-made solution for your organization, just like we have done it for our organization. Once we're done with defining what is it that we're going to do, we're going to go into the design phase. So the picture on my right, which I guess is on your left side, that shows an isolated recovery vault for a basic, simple solution. So as you can see, there are quite a bit of components here that you have to carefully think about how you're going to put things together. So the vault includes virtual or physical compute nodes. The heart of the solution is a hardened data domain. The backup application host needs to be sized. Recovery test hosts must be sized to run the largest applications. And of course, we need to consolidate the infrastructure service hosts. We come then to the most important portion, the Cybersense software. Dell's PowerProtect Cyber Recovery is the first solution in the market to fully integrate Cybersense, which adds an intelligent layer of protection to help find data corruption in case or when an attack penetrates the data center. And as I've discussed this before, speed is of absolute importance here. The faster we understand what is going on when we've been attacked, the less data that we lose. And during the design phase, GlassHouse consultants will look at your situation and design all of that, just like they've done it for our own company. Now, step 3 is deployment. We've defined what we want to do with you. We've defined how we're going to do it. And of course, there comes a time where things have to go live. So the most exciting part is when we bring everything to your site and we start building it. Now, we have to deploy a hardened data domain. This has to be done on site. That's why we have to wear our masks. And then we have to implement the cyber recovery software, the Cybersense software, and all the other bits and pieces that make all of this work together. Once it's done, our heroes with masks will certify the vault by testing the recovery host implementation, and we will know that you're ready to go. So this is now step 3. We've just gone live. There comes then step number 4. Operational excellence is 100% important, because this is basically cyber incident insurance. So if you choose to buy managed services from GlassHouse, our people will actually work with you to scan point-in-time copies, look at the analytics, look at the analysis, repeat all this copying, and investigate whatever is going on in your vault, so that you know things are working properly day in, day out. Now, a lot of companies are also allowing us to manage their primary backups, and this allows them ease of mind, because they know GlassHouse is offering managed services for their entire backup operation, from primary to disaster, all the way to cyber recovery center. Now, we're operating everything, and then an incident happens. What do we do? So step number 5 is all about creating a tailor-made cyber recovery management process and the runbook for your company. But before I jump all the way into cyber recovery management process, let's just talk about what's going to happen in case of an incident. So this is now your process, your recovery process. An incident happens, and the first process in your IT department is incident management. So the input is clear, something's going wrong, maybe a system error, human mistake, corruption, something. So at this point, the IT department looks at what's going on and says, okay, I need to recover data. I need to work my recovery management process. If you have outsourced your recovery processes to GlassHouse, we will take care of all of this for you. But if you haven't, and you're running your own backup operation, you're going to go into your recovery management mode. And then you're going to say, okay, we need to recover something. You will work with your technical team, your change advisory board, your risk manager, to ascertain what kind of recovery you want to do. Obviously, if it's GlassHouse giving you managed services, this is our job. So the first type of recovery that you might do is operational recovery management. This is pretty straightforward. Your production site is available. You can't determine a cyber crime. This is great. You use the operational recovery per the standard backup policy. Boom, you're back. Everything is good. Thank God we used Dell's DPS suite and data domain. We can actually restore and continue our lives. Now, the second thing that we might run into is the production site is not available and there is no cyber crime. This is typical disaster recovery scenario where you have to fail over to your disaster recovery site and actually work your IT from there. A lot of cases, a lot of customers have managed not only their production sites, but also their disaster recovery sites or the disaster recovery operation in between, and we help customers take care of this. Now, here we come to today's topic. Your input in this case, in the third option, is your production site is available. However, fortunately, you have been able to determine that cybercrime has taken place. So what do you do then? Now, what GlassHouse consultants will do as part of our cyber recovery service, we will sit down and create a cyber incident, a data backup recovery plan for you. Your organization will have a separate cyber incident response plan. So you will work with your security team to perform forensics and damage assessment. And then you will say, you know what? I know what's going on. I'm going to erase this. I'm going to recover from my cyber recovery vault. That's where we get in as GlassHouse, and we work with you to recover your data back into production. And after that, you can go into your crisis management and security management roles or processes. Because as you can imagine, once a cyber incident happens and GlassHouse comes and restores that data, you still have quite a bit to do, talking to the police, putting out public relations bulletins out there. You have to get back to normal operations. To achieve all of this, to make sure that your recovery, cyber recovery, works properly, as step 5, GlassHouse consultants will work with you to create a runbook so that you can use when the cyber attack happens. So our cyber recovery service runbook will include scope, recovery scenarios, activation plans, the topology, roles and responsibilities, action plan details, service restart recovery actions, rollback actions, test plan, and overall cyber recovery process. The number one value that we add to you, however, is we will give you the experts that can execute this cyber recovery runbook. People who have been doing backup day in, day out for years and have very good understanding of application layer. So how to restore an Oracle OLTP or OLAP database, how to restore Active Directory, Microsoft SQL, that type of stuff. Because all of this, in case of a cyber attack, needs to happen quickly so that you can get back on operations. One of our customers, they didn't have cyber recovery service from us. Smallest of cyber attacks, it's actually a .com selling things online, quite a large company. It took them 2 weeks to turn their website back on, which was just an absolute disaster for them. So all of this needs to happen very quickly, and we can only do quick with high quality if we are thoroughly prepared and thoroughly trained. And that's the value that GlassHouse will add. Now, let me just summarize what I've been talking about. What GlassHouse Cyber Recovery Services is, it's a tailored solution for your organization made by consultants that have decades of experience in data backup and business continuity. And we will follow a 5-step process to deliver the solution to you. Number 1, identify. We will sit down with you and identify the most critical data and applications to protect. Number 2, design. We will design a tailor-made cyber recovery solution, including the hardware, software, and services to fit your business objectives. Number 3 is deploy. We will deploy and configure the right solution for your business. Number 4 is operate. We will operate the backup environment per the design process. And number 5, when the attack comes, we will respond with you. If I have to look at GlassHouse, look at Dell's solution, look at the market right now, and if I have to ask myself, why GlassHouse Cyber Recovery Services? There are really 5 points. Number 1, it's the technology. The Dell EMC Cyber Recovery Solution has hundreds of customers around the world. There is no solution that is as mature as the Dell Cyber Recovery Solution. It comes with an automatic, isolated AirGap solution using the industry leader PBA data domain. This totally negates the need for using cumbersome tape-based solutions. The most important part here is the file level analysis capability that the Dell software brings using artificial intelligence and machine learning. That means we understand what has been corrupted quickly, and we lose a minimum amount of data. There's a unique Dell EMC relationship at GlassHouse. We've received the 2020 Service Delivery Global Partner Award. We have an exclusive relationship with Dell since 2004, direct access to Dell Level 3 engineering to facilitate speedy incident resolution. And we have built our organization ground up to support backup environments 24/7, 365. We can create tailor-made managed services for you, and this cyber recovery solution and other backup solutions, we can actually offer you per terabyte pricing. So that means for your on-premise solution, you get to pay as if you bought it from the cloud. We have the industry-leading team, all trained through the Dell EMC programs. The most important thing is we don't know just Dell. We are also experts in Oracle, Microsoft, SAP, Rancher, Cisco, Azure, and AWS. We have unparalleled experience in EMEA. We answer over 6,000 DPS customer calls per year. We have customers that are dozens of banks, telcos, public enterprises, all kinds of verticals across the entire of Middle East, Africa, and Turkey. Put together, we believe we have the industry-leading solution for cyber recovery services. I want to thank you for taking the time, and hopefully I'll be able to meet you face-to-face as soon as the pandemic allows it.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Op, for that very, very interesting presentation, and 3 great presentations from all our guests. Before we jump into a Q&A session, and I would like to invite our attendees to put some questions in there if you would like them answered. We are going to kickstart another poll here just to ask, do you have cyber insurance? And whether yes, no, or what is cyber insurance? So I think that's a question that's not going to be asked by many companies too often. While we wait for the polls to come into that, I think, gentlemen, we can kickstart into a bit of a Q&A. And the first question that I've got here is, if you already have a recover point for your data, why do you need cyber recovery? What is the appeal of cyber recovery over that?
Okay, James, it's Mike here. I'll jump in and take that question. From my side, yes, you may have a recovery point. And if you remember from my early intro, I said there that although your backup and recovery and your disaster recovery components of your business continuity plan do have multiple recover points, RPOs, RTOs, all that sort of good stuff we've spoken about traditionally for a long time, we now need to have a look at the new way of doing things. And your traditional recover points will not, in most cases, work. As you saw in Greg's presentation, the first place they will attack is your backup and recovery catalog. So where your current recover points are stored in your current software that you're doing backup and recovery, be it to tape, be it to disk, be it to some other type of format, the first place they'll attack is destroy that, because they know you will be able to recover from that data very quickly. So the first target is that. Then they go and encrypt your data, and the stuff remains continuously embedded inside your data. So you may well recover, and all of a sudden it kicks off and all your data gets encrypted again. So your current methods of doing recover points, they're very valid in certain instances, but against cyber attacks, the current way, the traditional way of doing things is not always 100% successful. So cyber recovery has its place, and it is replacing the recover points that are currently compromised.
Can I add into that as well, Mike? Thanks for the introduction. Just to keep in mind with the question, the average threat actor sits in a deployed environment for an average 100 days before the threat vector is launched. If you are consistently backing up and replicating data to your disaster recovery site, and let's just say you're in a 100-day scenario, the chances of you replicating a compromised system to your disaster recovery site in a 100-day window is actually particularly high. And so therefore, when the actual incident happens and we start to invoke DR, the chances of you recovering out of a DR situation is probably pretty slim, because the vast majority of attacks have been replicated to the DR site way before the actual threat actor kicks off the ransom, for example. So that's one of the biggest reasons why DR sites and TCO, TPO, recovery point objectives and recovery objectives do not work for customer environments, and you need separate environments with analytics to understand how data has changed, even in the 100-window typical scenario that I referred to.
Oh, thank you, Greg, and thank you, Mike, for that. Let's maybe touch on, we're talking about, obviously, as you articulated there, we need extra security, and part of the reason why is the attackers are getting a lot more sophisticated and security is getting more complex. The problem is, though, the complexity of security, even with today's, let's call it, appetite for it from companies, is still kind of overwhelming. In your experience, maybe some guidance for our attendees, where do companies typically get stuck when they try and address security and get these sophisticated solutions in there? Because I'm sure there's always a lot of intent, but then when it comes down to action, problems creep in. So what should the market be aware about when they want to improve their security and bring this kind of solution into bear?
I'll take that one. It's Greg here again. So certainly we see that there's a lot of very good security technology out in the industry, but it's a very fragmented industry, for example. And what we're seeing with customers, they say, let's look at the best firewall technology, and let's just say it's a specific brand or specific product. And then they look at the best network technology or the best encryption technology. And what customers are doing is they're evaluating vendors on their strengths in the individual domains. But what we're seeing is that vendor may be strong in a specific domain, for example, like firewall technology, but they don't necessarily have a complete integrated, intrinsically integrated solution, and that's where many customers are falling apart. It's as if customers are saying, hey, my walls are really high for my property, for example, so therefore I won't get anybody over the wall. But there could be other ways to get in, for example, like social engineering, or potentially access, or potentially files that are copied on local Wi-Fi. That's potentially other ways to get in. And the value proposition that we have for our customers is to say that security must be completely integrated and be intrinsically focused from the top to the bottom inside an organization. Whilst we're talking about cyber recovery today, this is just one element of a very common framework, commonly determined or known as the NIST framework, for example. And the NIST framework talks about how data starts, how it arrives, how do we look at securing ourselves, how do we look at managing the data through the business, and potentially how do we protect ourselves, detect, respond, and then finally recover. The point that we're covering today is ultimately the recover portion of it. But when you think about the NIST cybersecurity framework as a good example, there's work to be done in all four of the previous areas before we come to the recover point. And that's the key value proposition that organizations like Dell, with our partners, GlassHouse, can help you through that process. We have the solutions and technology across the framework that we can help our customers with today. And that's an area that we need to talk to customers about regularly and often with our technology from Dell Technologies as the vendor.
Thank you.
And then just to,
Yes,
James, just on that, just to complement what Greg has said, we will also help you educate people inside your organization. Most people are not realizing that, you know, they say, oh, I've got backup, that's a recover point. I've got disaster recovery, that's a recover point. And none of these are revenue generating systems. And you don't realize the value of having this technology and the business continuity plan and all these components in place until such time as you lose data and you have to recover and your business is down. It then becomes a quantifiable value. Up until that point, it's not. And that's where we can help educate the organization to show that these things are happening and it is worth your while, because when you get hit and you have a golden copy of your data, it's priceless. You cannot put a cost to it.
Fantastic. Thank you, Mike and Greg. One last question from the audience before we close the session. Rafiq Halde asks, can you activate Power Protect on existing data domains?
Yes. So generally, Rafiq, the way we seem to work with these environments is that We start out with very small data domain or software deployments with our customers, depending on what the budgets and the target workloads that we look at. As budgets become available inside the businesses, we can add on layers of the additional technology, and eventually we can get you a full cyber resilient solution, just like what we've prepared for you today. But absolutely, the short answer to your question is yes, and we can work with existing accounts to expand that with our partner GlassHouse to make it all happen, because ultimately it requires a plan to execute against, but it's certainly something that can be done.
Greg, if I might add to that, that's actually exactly what we did at GlassHouse. So we had data domains. We were backing up our data on data domains, and we have been doing it for years. We have quite a bit of data, and we said, okay, what are the crown jewels? So you can't just put everything in the cyber vault. You have to pick your crown jewels. And that's exactly what we did. We went through the step one. We identified what is it that we want to reach, what's our most important data, and what is our storage and our backup environment like. And we said, okay, we have an X amount of data. We're going to put Y amount of this in the vault. And we used as much equipment. We reused as much equipment as possible. All we did was we added a small secondary data domain, hardened it, put it in a vault, and we added the software and the services to make the vault happen. So that's exactly what we did. We used existing equipment.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Alp and Greg, for that answer. We really appreciate your time today. We also appreciate the time of our audience today for listening in. The recording will be available of this event, so please be in touch with the webinar people and they will get it to you. As well as please reach out to GlassHouse and find out more about this. I want to quickly just go over the polls that we had earlier. And how long did it take your organization to recover from a cyber attack? 0% said within minutes, 9% within hours. I'm hoping they are already GlassHouse customers. 3% within 1 day and 25% within 1 week, which is an eternity. 3% within 1 month. That is forever. And then there is astounding here, 6% don't actually know, 3% had no ability to recover, and 12% cannot disclose on that. It's quite a widespread. And if we also look at cyber insurance, 50% of the audience said yes, 37% said no, they do not have cyber insurance. 12% don't even know what cyber insurance is. I think you should look into that very quickly. And then finally, are you planning a cyber recovery program in the next 12 months? 66% said yes, and only 33% said no. We are definitely in an era where these things have to be paid attention to. I think we are also in a time where it is a good period to activate security. Business is very positive on it now. The idea of business resiliency and security are very close together. This situation is not going to last. You know how business works. Once economies start ticking up again, once other priorities start stepping in, these things are going to start moving backwards on the list. Now is the time to look at this, and not only to look at security, but what we've seen today is GlassHouse and Dell have taken a phenomenal concept, air-gapping, for example, that was once completely impractical just because of its nature, the speed of operations versus air-gapping. It was too onerous. GlassHouse has clearly built an impressive managed service set around this to bring this technology into the real-time speed that organizations need today, or let's say close to real-time. The fact is to get you up quickly and to keep the bad guys out of your backups, because as Greg has pointed out there, they've become very good at crawling into those areas. So I hope you found today's discussion very informative. Please get in touch with GlassHouse, get in touch with Dell, and also get in touch with ITWeb if you would like to know more. I would like to thank our guests for today. You heard today firstly from Mr. Alp Barachik. He is the CEO of GlassHouse, joining us all the way from Turkey. Thank you, sir, for your time today. We also had today as a guest Mr. Mike Steyer. He is the country manager for GlassHouse, gave us a very good insight on what they bring there. So thank you for your time, Mike. And then finally, Mr. Greg McDonald, Director for Systems Engineering at Dell Technology South Africa. Greg, thank you very much for taking time off your schedule to explain this concept a bit more. I hope it's enlightened people. I hope you're going to explore your options a bit more around security. And let's keep the bad guys away. My name is James Francis. I was your host today for the ITWeb and GlassHouse webinar on cyber recovery. Please enjoy the rest of your day. Please join our next webinar and please stay safe online and have a good afternoon.
Many thanks to everyone. Thank you.
In the era of digital transformation, data volume is increasing exponentially, and the way we live and work is changing. So, is your data, the fuel of your digital business, safe? As organizations try to do more with less, operational excellence and focusing on value-added activities are becoming ever harder. Even more, 63% of businesses are not sure that they can recover all of their data from their backup systems. Keep up with digital transformation. Ensure that your data is protected and secure. Replace outdated and unreliable data protection platforms that have high restore times. Avoid high infrastructure costs. At GlassHouse, we work with our customers to offer the most appropriate data protection technology for their environment. Our approach enables our customers to get the most out of their investments. GlassHouse works with Dell Technologies to offer market-leading software and hardware. Dell's portfolio integrates data backup and business continuity solutions into a single product family. Our team of experienced engineers uses GlassHouse's established best practices to analyze enterprise business continuity needs, advise IT teams, as well as design, install, support, and operate enterprise backup and business continuity solutions. GlassHouse has implemented data backup and business continuity projects to more than 250 enterprises, including telecoms, banks, industrial companies, and government agencies. Every day, we meet the toughest RPO and RTO targets of enterprise IT customers. Data backup and business continuity are part of GlassHouse's DNA. Your data is safe with GlassHouse.